Welcome to the Compromise to Alchemize podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Neel Bulchandani. All right, so good morning. I am here with you, Melissa. It is amazing to have you on my podcast, and this is the Compromise to Alchemize podcast, and so, what an honor to have you on. What a privilege to be getting to know you as we've had some really phenomenal overlap with people we know for a while. And it's really fascinating to see how our worlds interwove and just kind of, I would start off right at the bat. I mean, the kind of, I feel like conversations that we've had already, which I think back and I'm like, if we could have recorded those, that would have been really cool because
I know.
we had some gold. But I'm excited for the gold that will come from, as we talked, you getting to share, and with whoever's listening, watching, our audiences, like your authentic journey and what you carry in terms of a message. And I can say it's like a halcyon and a clear, strong mission and vision of what you feel really is pivotal for helping so many. So we'll dive into that, but Melissa Mugno, for those of you who on my side or anybody's my audience who doesn't know, OMT is, and Melissa will go into more of this, but
Yeah.
oromyofunctional therapy, and you could say orofacial myology, and you could say myofunctional therapy, and she's a specialist. Melissa is much more than a specialist in something. I would say that, I'm just going to say she reminds me of Jay Shetty. And the part of that I really love to talk about, or I've just loved to tell her about very recently, is that I feel that he is an excellent communicator, but it's that he really cares to dive deep into the things that tangle us so that he can be a voice and how can we can untangle from those things. So entrepreneur, family person with, her family she cares for dearly. She has a team she cares for dearly. And I've just been excited to see what Melissa has done and just kind of witness how much, care and how much, I'll say magic you put into what you do. So without being too abstract and vague, I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to say, Melissa, say hi and just kind of
Hi.
give us
Well,
a hello.
yeah. Well, hello. Well, thank you so much. Those are some really, really kind words. And I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come on, getting to know you. I believe it's part of the divine and everything happens just perfectly. And there's no coincidences. Everything happens exactly when it's supposed to happen. And I'm definitely feeling 2025 was a lot about just growth and clarity. 2024 for me was a lot of, I want to almost use the word harvest, like a lot of, maybe I should even say, yeah, since 2021, I've been on quite a journey, which has been hard, but fabulous at the same time. And so just giving me the opportunity to just come and talk to you and talk to your audience and hopefully pull in some new people that cross sides and just show them a different way about how we kind of present and show up in this like airway centric world, where like, it's funny to call it an airway centric world because like if we're a human, like everybody has to be airway centric to be alive. Yeah. But I'll take it. It's our little crew. It's our club. But the goal is that it no longer is like a little crew and a club, and it's truly the collective, and everybody kind of gets back into this balance. And that's what I've been. So I would love to just share a little bit. So the OMT behind my name. So any of you guys that are in the myofunctional world or know of it, if you're in the dental world or you're, possibly an ENT that knows about this, it's a little bit political right now in the myofunctional space of, so currently myofunctional therapists are usually hygienists and speech therapists. Okay. So they're the two collective professions that tend to then take on the next level of this myofunctional niche, which is, and I don't want to do it any disservice. It really should be its own standalone space because it's a really deep dive and understanding of the oral cavity, the neck, lips, cheeks, the lower, just the whole, or like the whole head itself, and how internally in the mouth affects so much. And so ultimately, speech therapists, this is their wheelhouse naturally because of pronunciation and how important the tongue is for speaking, swallowing and chewing. That's absolutely, most people would say, naturally makes sense. It should be in their aligned space. But the thing is that teeth, oral tissue, also live in that space. So, right, it's a shared space, and hygienists and dental professionals really know this space really well on a different level. And ultimately, my journey is even more unique. Is yes, I'm a hygienist, but I never really practiced. I went, school. I really started off as a dental assistant, and then, I worked every aspect of a dental office, and ultimately wanted to be. I fell in love with orthodontics, and I wanted to go to dental school and become an orthodontist. And I had a lot of words back in the day for why that didn't happen, but a lot of it was because I couldn't really remember what I read. So that was going to be a little troublesome to get into dental school when you couldn't retain on a high level. So ultimately, I had prerequisites, and I just was like, okay, I'll go to hygiene. But it was never a passion, to be honest. But now I know it was an important part of the journey. And my best friend was an orthodontist and a really good mentor. And he pretty much said, like, you're way better at selling and building dental practices than some of that stuff, and connecting, and you said communicating.
Yeah.
So I finished, but then I ended up really in the development of dental offices and building them, and helping, just bring synergy, and like really creating these like awesome spaces of like how to elevate and get the most out of your practice. And I got introduced to airway through that. And that's because that mentor, his father was a neonatologist, and one thing led to another. And long story short, I ended up in Myo as a default because we implemented a bunch of airway appliances, and they were not working. They were kind of failing. And interestingly, I realized that this exercise thing had a big part of it. It was a missing piece of, for whatever reason, and our team just couldn't execute it. We didn't understand how to communicate on it. And therefore that was a break in the site, like in our well-oiled machine, to be honest. And one thing led to another. I ended up out in Colorado with Sandy Colson, who is a myofunctional therapist. She's like an OG for me. There's a lot of other really great ones, but for me, Sandy. And interesting enough, Sandy's husband, she's a speech therapist, by the way, but her husband was an orthodontist. So me and her kind of clicked. And one thing led to another. So I ended up from there, and then so forth and so on. I ended up then eventually with Dr. Zaghi, Sarah Hornsby, and I ended up really connecting, and I really have really joined, and I'm on faculty with Myo Mentor. I ended up sitting for that, and I've sat on multiple things. So myofunctional therapy for me has really kind of cultivated, but I'm really a huge advocate of myofunctional therapy staying in the dental space, because what we can see and identify with teeth and connective is really a crucial part of this whole unraveling and unbalancing. So we're in this time right now of figuring things out, and sometimes when you're in that season, there's a lot of feelings and opinions and reactiveness going on. So there was a conversation. I consult. I have a consulting firm, so I go to like lots of states, and in dental hygiene, the licensing is per state, right? And so a long time ago, I haven't cleaned teeth in 14 years, 13 years or something. And so my sister-in-law is a lawyer, and when I started the consulting firm, she had told me I would drop your hygiene and not use it, because and that licensing board could say if they're not acknowledging myofunctional therapy. So a long time ago, I dropped the RDH and I just said OMT. And then nowadays, that was kind of political back then. And then just recently, the last year or two, it appears some states are figuring things out. So now all of a sudden, I'm ahead of the curve. And I'm like, oh, I did that just because of going into offices in different parts of the country. And I was always working. I always have done Myo really very collective with a dentist. So I'm all about empowering the dental team about involving this. So it's a little bit about the OMT in the back, but I specialize and I work with, myofunctional therapy, but I really, really focus on the whole body. And for me, my big thing is the breath and just being able to connect the breath to all other things.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, yeah, so many moments there as you spoke. It reminded me of an analogy that I think I use at times, but it's like when I hear the breath from which you breath, the breath from which you speak, and the experiences that you've had, it's like I mean, I love that you have the OMT appellation behind your name, but it's so that we could see that, so that we can understand that. But it's like, as a director overseer, I look at you as a conductor, and that maestra who you've learned, like, and I'm not speaking that everything in the world, but at the same time you have such a good wide body of wisdom and understanding, which has knowledge built into it. So like these different instruments. I think the two parallels of the body has these instruments, teeth, lips, cheeks, all the fancy words that we could use for all those areas, right? And then we have the different instruments within an office that you've been involved in directing, helping oversee, helping clinics run, helping teams run, helping infrastructures operate, and that's a different kind of conductor too. So then I think when you step into the overseeing and you can see the way that things work and gel and the way they don't, that's so much about interpersonal dynamics, understanding what makes people work, thrive, flourish, what nourishes them. So from any of our conversations, that's really what I get from you, because necessarily that's how you would look at one person and their breath and their movement and help them with OMT. But then you would, I mean, I'm just kind of throwing this on you. I would imagine it's like so interesting that you can look at a team that way, a full on practice, and I know you consult with, you've consulted with and consult with so many. So I'm always fascinated by that, like, way that we can look at how we stream out who we are, and how really when you figure something out like you have, you really like care for all the parts of someone, because there is no real part by part by part. It's like we are one whole person. And so within that, I can see the way you look at a team as well.
Well, the team, I appreciate that as well. I mean, the team aspect was always something I cared about. I struggled with it at times too. Don't get me wrong. There was times I thought I just always knew, let me bring this up. I became really, so because I was realized that if we didn't have strong teams or people that could communicate these kind of complex concepts or conversations, which realistically they're not that complex, but a to the lay person, to the mom or dad, or to the patient walking in, especially to a dental office that thinks they're just getting their teeth cleaned, or, getting a filling. And then all of a sudden someone's talking about the way they're breathing, the way they're
Yeah.
sleeping, or the way they're walking, or their hips or their shoulders. I used to so I'm an analogy queen. And that's because I'll be honest, like, I really struggled with spelling and reading. So sometimes I'll use the wrong word. If I do, I apologize. Usually you can catch what I'm throwing.
Yeah.
But that's because I had a lot of learning disabilities that were undiagnosed. And I think it starts, and if you're okay, I'd love to share a little bit about my own personal story for a sec. I had been, here I had shared to you, I couldn't get to dental school, things. I had a lot of very fundamental areas in my childhood that were struggled. I did have, an environment that maybe was less than desirable, but I did have people that loved me, and I had a house and all that great stuff. So there's people way worse, right? But I struggled internally with a lot of things. So one thing, always being late. So I was always late to school, couldn't really wake up in the morning, and in some ways got identified as like not being disobedient, like not wanting to follow the rules. I remember being early on, my mom telling me that as a baby, I had my nights and days mixed up. Like a lot of things were passed to me, like as if I had all these like major life decisions when I was an infant,
Yeah.
I know I'm smart, but I wasn't. And I know, at the time I didn't, I looked back and there was probably some resentment and some physical, harboring of those feelings that I had suppressed and stuff. And I had to work really hard to kind of pretend to be smart, or if that makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
it felt like I was pretending to be something. So I very early had imposter, I think most of us have imposter syndrome, but I almost like really had no clue of who I was, right? Dentistry, in a sense, saved me. And I say that, and if I get emotional, I'm sorry. I'm also
No,
have a little bit of a head cold. So there was a time in my teenage year, I was like 20-ish, and something, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I remember I got my license taken away for 6 months. And I had a stepfather who very much like loved me, but was hard on me. And it's what I needed. And I remember him saying to me, you have to find a job that I pretty much can like throw you out of the car. Like, I'm not going to make an extra right or an extra left. Like, it has to be on my route. This was not easy. So I grew up in New Jersey, and like, you literally came out of our town and then you had to get on the highway, and his job was off of another exit. Didn't leave me with a lot. And I remember there was like this area, and it was a 7-Eleven, a Dunkin' Donuts, a bar, and 2 dental offices. And I mean this, no joke, like, no, and I'm not saying anything, like, the 7-Eleven was not hiring me. It was family run. The Dunkin' Donuts wasn't hiring me, family run. Okay. And the bar wasn't open in the morning, and he was only going to pick me up in the middle of his work times.
Right.
So there was 2 dental offices, and it was an endodontic office. And there was a general downstairs, and I go every day before I was losing my license, and I would like, please I'll do anything. I just need a job. Long and the short, the endodontist finally hired me, and he pretty much just hired me to like bag instruments or whatever. And talk about divine. I learned a ton. The day I get there, his dental assistant walks out on him, and I'm like, oh my gosh. He's in the middle of doing something called an apicoectomy, right? An apico is when they flap the gums and they do a root canal from the other side, like from the apex. And I remember he comes in the back and he looks at me and he goes, all right, well, you have 2 hands. You're coming. I have no idea what I'm doing, guys. So I'm 18, I guess. And I look, and I'd never seen anything like that. But let me tell you something. I'm a visual learner. Okay. I just saw the whole tooth, like apex down. I saw the anatomy. I got to see everything. So I learned everything about anatomy from visual because he showed me, and he needed me to be there. And I would work all the time because my stepfather would just leave me there. I learned through root canals. I learned the tooth from the inside out, which was perfect for me. Yeah. I learned what would happen if it decayed from the inside. I learned about bone loss. I saw bone. I saw how the teeth moved in the apex. And then, like, this was a pivotal part of the foundation for me. I fell in love with dentistry at that point, right? Like, I didn't know I shouldn't say, I didn't know I was falling in love, but I fell in love I enjoyed going to work, if that made sense. I felt like I had a purpose. He was teaching me because he needed me. It was like perfect synergy, where a lot of people would have been like, oh, like, look at that as a negative. I learned so much about myself during those times. And I didn't know, now I look back, I know what I learned. I'm not sure I was appreciating it at the moment, but I was making good money, all these great things. So dentistry kind of lured me in. Like, does that mean like it romanced me in a sense? I made more money than my friends. I didn't go away, but I didn't go back away to school. I ended up staying home, and like, it was a pivotal change in my life. And then ultimately I got another job at an orthodontist, and so forth and it just set on from there. Right. So I learned this craft, and learning endo and ortho is really, they're like completely 2 different spectrums of dentistry. And if I would have gotten the job at the general, I would have fell in this midline. Does that make sense? Like, I wouldn't have gotten this like great contrast, this light and dark. Does that make sense? Like, for me, I use it. And for me, it was everything I needed. So it allowed me ultimately to understand how teeth move. It made me recognize. And then ultimately, as it went, and this first time, fast forward, I end up in my first airway course, Dr. Barry Rayfield in New Jersey. And I remember, and it's a myobrace course that I ended up, my career started kind of in that myobrace world. And I remember them talking about sleep disorders, grinding, clenching, breathe. Tear is like dropping down my eye. I kind of wipe it away because I have an ego, and I'm like trying to, I'm defensive, and I have all these like layers of stuff that I've developed over the years. But it was the first time in my life, like maybe I didn't have my days and nights mixed up. Maybe there was something going on with me. Maybe I was sleeping late all the time because I could never fall asleep. I had anxiety because of that. Like it
Mm,
just started to like it went through on a very like into my heart in a way.
yeah.
And I remember my buddy looks at me and he says, "Does this concept make sense to you?" And I'm like, it does. I go, I don't understand it all, but I could communicate it because I could relate to it on
Hmm.
a very personal level. So ultimately, people say I'm a decent salesperson, but I think that's just because of the communication part and
Yeah.
because I try really hard to see people and I like feel their energy. And I was kind of a chameleon early on and I had to adapt. So it's one of my spidey senses, but I had to build that on as childhood. My mother had struggled. And so we had a lot of change. So I had to quickly adapt. So I used my spidey sense ultimately later on. And I have to be that I sold so much MyoBrace in that office because it was like
Uh-huh.
it just rolled. And then ultimately that led me to realize where we were struggling because now we had all these cases and things weren't lining up. And I remember him looking at me like, you better figure this out. And I'm like, me? But because in dental, muscles and exercises, that does it. That's like speaking another language, right? Right. We got to fix something. We move it. We want to see it happen, right? Very
Yeah.
cause and effect.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
this really was interesting. But for me, and then the breathing and so forth and so on, it just kind of took on a life of itself.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, you know what I need to make sure I add in communicator, yes, but storyteller even more. You're just such a gifted storyteller because and even when you started telling me that and sharing that, I thought, oh, this is really what compromised to alchemized is all about. It started off with this phrase that I said to my wife Dawn. I said I was just pacing around our house, and one day I don't know, whenever I made this switch to calling it this versus the prior name, which was embryology. I was just like, how are we gonna like how can we go from these compromised airways to alchemized airways? And right
Mm,
there I'm like, oh right, the alchemy is the goal. It's not a linear like you have to do X and A, B, and C and you get to the results. We need this confluence of things to happen, and it's an inner and an outer struggle that leads to this joy and beauty and healing. But then, my Don was like, maybe you should just say compromise to alchemize. Like, how can we go from compromise to alchemize? Like, that's so good because just like you said, Melissa, it's not about the airway. It is, but it isn't. It's about
yeah.
like who we are. And so, those formation moments, like pretty amazing to go back in time. I feel like I was there, like seeing you go through that journey of like when you realized like yeah, what a fascinating thing that you could look at the tooth and learn about that from that perspective, and then learn about what ailed you that you didn't even know about, and then how it took you into this, like right in the heart of this journey. Um, it's
It's
like
it. Yeah. It
it's
was
beautiful.
Thanks. And I really had to learn to embrace the journey, right? Like on it, like and like have gratitude for it, right? That listen, it's not easy. There's been a lot of times I should have quit, to be honest, right? Like my family will tell you, like, I mean, the reason I'm sitting here with you today is pure, I don't know, maybe um just stubbornness, not willing to fail. But I would like to say perseverance, conviction, but also I want to say is like that something inside of me, like I don't think I cannot not talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And so the moment after that course, that was I think 2011. My daughter was like about 1. And I remember my husband and my 2 very good friends, we just actually just saw them over New Year's. They were sitting and we belonged to this like community pool. And in New Jersey, we only get a couple months of like really nice weather, right? You get like July, August. And I remember when the owner, my mentor, he was like, "Hey, we're going to go to this course in Jersey in August." And I was like, "What? On the weekend?" No one wants to do that. So I leave the course. My husband and our friends are at the pool with our kids. And I walked in there, and they'll tell you from that moment on, I never stopped talking about it. Like
Mm.
it changed me forever. I never could see things the same. Now, I was embarking a new journey, and there was
Mm.
a lot of times for in the beginning of my career. And I always say, like, the people that gave me the opportunity to work with them and develop them in the beginning, I guess if they find me again, they should come back, because I just did what I knew, and I was very forceful, right? I would deliver with conviction and sometimes defensiveness, right? I was
Yeah.
like a know-it-all. I was coming from a good place, but I was also a very broken person, right? So I was insecure. So I was compensating a lot. I knew I had these gifts, but they were a little they needed some shining. so
Yeah.
I I did what I did is I just practiced, and like very much like an apprentice, I just did the work, and I just tried and I tried and I tried, and I learned from the failures, sometimes not as quickly as I should have, but and I would repeat some insane behavior over and over again
Mm.
till finally I was like, it didn't work. But I did realize I had a unique space in this world where a lot of great speech therapists, a lot of great hygienists, they haven't been on the development of a business side, right? Of like truly taking, like having a conversation with a doctor and kind of in a way like holding your own and coming in with conviction and confidence. And because if you want these ladies and gentlemen who have really pushed themselves to, receive and claim the highest, degrees of area, you better show up with a little bit of something, to hold your own in that conversation. And that was something I wasn't afraid to do, and I think that was one area I had strength. So for a long time, I could talk to dentists easily. That was not hard for me. And I could tell that I could gather their attention. And ultimately, I realized where they struggled like most was that most providers are not always really great communicators or not great business developers. And I knew how to run a dental team. So I quickly then found a couple doctors that needed help with streamlining their teams. So I didn't mean to open up a consulting firm. I just opened an LLC and took on a couple practices, and I started traveling. And the first one was up in Boston. And then me and that doctor got really good. And he was on faculty with a team out in Las Vegas. And this guy had a bunch of dental practices. And then Sandy Colson hooked me up with someone in Denver. And all of a sudden, I'm going to Boston. I'm flying to Denver every 6 weeks. And I'm like working in all these offices. And a lot of time, the only way I knew how to teach was to do, which
Mm-hmm.
this took me a long time to figure out, Neel, that wasn't great, right? So a bunch of them, by the end, I would be there like a year, 2 years. And eventually what happened was they were just like, it felt like I was their employee, which wasn't
Mm.
like, what I mean? Like now it was like I
Yeah.
was part of their team, which felt
Right.
good, but
Yeah.
I wasn't setting them up to like truly, God forbid one person left. So I had
Right.
to learn, ways in that too, right? There was a lot to it, but I ended up with this really amazing opportunity from my good buddy out in, he does live in Vegas now, Yogi Chen. Um, I was with a group out in Las Vegas called Boston Dental Group that gave
Uh-huh.
me an opportunity to implement myofunctional therapy in their multiple offices. They're like a dental organizational group. And I met some really amazing people. And my husband said to me, well, if we're going to be going to Vegas all the time, maybe we look into to moving, because our daughter was pretty young. And I had some family out there, and this was a big deal. I mean, I had lived we're both Jersey kids, 30, and he's a little bit older than me. So he'd lived there his whole life. I'd lived there my whole life. And we picked up our family and moved out west, and we moved
Yeah.
to Las Vegas. And here I was still going to Denver, and I was doing stuff. I had an opportunity at UNLV now. I was like, what am
Mm.
I doing at the dental school talking about Myo? But I found this niche that nobody else was doing. And that was the connective niche, right? Like
Mm.
talking
Yeah.
about how do you get it in? And because most people were just focusing on the technique and the exercises, I I was more focused on like how to get more people to implement the concept.
Yeah.
And that was big for me. And then I learned a lot in Vegas because it was hard, right? If you don't have good staffing, you don't have turnover, you have a lot of turnover. And what it came down to is this: if you don't have great leadership and a really clear mission, it's going to be really hard to like bring this kind of like really larger concept into just a drill and fill concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what happened in Vegas, beautiful things happened in Vegas. One, um, our bonus child showed up. What happens in Vegas does not always stay in Vegas. We had our son, which we were never planning on having another child. We have two older from his first marriage, and then we have Natalie. And so we got Jackson. And I make a joke that the universe gives you what you want sometimes and what you need. Jackson was born with all the things, tongue tie, breathing, the whole nine. So now it was like, oh, you're going to practice this. Well, you're also going to be a parent of it. So that was huge. And here I was pregnant with Jackson, 2016. And I have a bunch of patients going on in Vegas, and we got a lot of things going. And a common friend of ours, how we ended up meeting in the first place. Listen, I had heard about tongue ties early on, 2011, 2010, or 12-ish, sorry, 11 and 12, from a doctor that was part of our MyoBrace group. His name's Dr. Dan Hansen. But MyoBrace was telling us, backtrack real quick, I ended up taking on a contract with MyoBrace in 2014. I was the educator and development for the East Coast for a year. So I was with them for a while. That was my first consulting client. And then eventually realized I didn't want to sell an appliance, and that me being with one group and like just selling one package was not aligned with me. But I met a lot. And so one of the things people need to know, we were doing Myo. We were trying to develop this stuff. Nobody was doing tongue ties. We were told, don't talk about them. Pretend like they're not there. No one's cutting them, right? But this guy, Dan, and they were letting him lecture in New Zealand and Australia. He would say, like, I would say to him, I'm like, I don't think this patient's going to be able to maintain palatal support, or they're when they put this appliance in, their head's not balanced. I think there's something tight holding them under there.
Yeah.
And he said it's tongue ties. Well, nobody was allowed. No one was talking about it. And now I had all these patients. I couldn't get them over a finish line. I couldn't even get my head around it to say, I couldn't truly internally say that they had completed something, or like that I felt like they really crossed over a bridge or something, because they were wound up still. You know what I mean? Maybe their teeth looked better. And I had a lot of cases that the teeth looked better. I even got a little symmetrical change in the face. But I knew in my heart that there wasn't something, like there was a piece I was missing. So I'm pretty pregnant. And I keep all the time, they're like, have you heard about this guy in LA, Zarush Zaghi? And I'm like, Zarush Zaghi? What? Like, okay. No, I haven't heard him. Starts coming around. His name's popping up for a couple months. I got about 15 patients I'm stuck with. So I'm always a little, I'll take some big risks. I call these patients and I say, listen, I'm going to pay for you to have a virtual consult with this guy. So I paid for and it was like, 10 or 12 patients to have a consult with this Zarush Zaghi guy. I would get on the consult. I would be the mediator, the communicator. I would pop up. Zaghi would come on. And I would say, hi, my name is Melissa Mugno. This is patient da-da-da. They've been doing myofunctional therapy for da-da-da-da. We've been working on this. We've been working on this. I've seen improvements here. I have seen that they're struggling there. I have this particular doctor that is willing to work on maybe a structural situation. Something is stuck, and I would like to see your opinion on why. Boom. Let them meet. After patient number 4, he's like, can you stay on after for a sec? Sure. He goes, who are you? And I said, I'm Melissa Mugno. And he's like, I've never seen anyone present like this. He's like, you're paying for these people? I said, yeah. I go, I can't figure it out. So I was like, I got to figure it out. And he goes, come down to LA. Came to LA, met him. I ended up doing a bunch of patients, and I ended up on his team. In the beginning, I was one of the first with the first crew of his faculty. Just a fabulous time of my life. I got to go to first lecture ever in front of anybody in Napa Valley with him. I remember having dinner with him and his wife and my husband and he goes, what do you want to do? And I had never really been asked like that. I said, I think I want to speak. I said, I think I want to like educate and talk. And he's like, do it. I was like, oh, what if no one takes me seriously? He's like, just create something, just do it and practice it. And then it's kind of how it started. And then I went from there, and then we just kept growing and things like that. But it was a game changer, right? It really changed. And when Zaghi and TBI came came in the field, I mean, when I say, right, talk about AI. I mean, he was AI for airway in the beginning, right? Like he took it from here and he brought it to another level. And all of a sudden we saw so much growth and people just getting more involved. He was such a pillar and a movement of changing and giving us freedom and giving us the ability to communicate, and forever indebted for that, and honor and very have so much gratitude to be able to call him a friend and a colleague, and his whole team were very pivotal in where I'm at today. As our journeys have all changed, COVID changed a lot for a lot of people. And for me, it was a really great time. I know a lot of people suffered and lost, and I recognize that. But for me, I needed that. I needed to soften. I needed that quiet, right? I needed to just be. And I had made this crazy decision. A doctor that I met at TBI, I was doing some consulting down here in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never met a guy like him. He was really, I met a lot of dentists, but this guy and I seemed to click. We had some real good synergy. And ultimately, he gave me an opportunity. He said, listen, I was already consulting. I was coming down here once a month or whatever. And during COVID, he said, listen, I want to build this huge airway center. I want to go all out. And he goes, I think you're my person. He goes, would you and your family move here? Him and his wife flew out to Vegas. They met with us, met with my husband and my mom. And after COVID, a lot of people moved to Florida. And during COVID, during the initial shutdowns and stuff, we did recognize how far we were from our people, there's some about that 3-hour time difference that it affects. And I don't know. I looked at him and he looked at him and I said, do you want to take this? And I'm not, I tell everybody there was a large financial incentive that thought, but part of the deal was that I had to close down everything I had done in Vegas and ultimately just go become an employee of this person. And I thought that's what I wanted. I thought, at that time, and we took that leap, and I drove down to my good friend, Sarah Hornsby moved to Arizona, and I drove to Sarah, and I went to her house, and I said, I think I'm going to do this, and I'd like to give you my practice, and maybe you merge it with faceology. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I just think I need to do this. And then we started our journey to Lafayette, Louisiana. And I won't go crazy into it, but I'll just say I got here and about 3 months in, my entire world collapsed. Everything that I knew and that I thought came to it right in my face. And I tell each and every one of you now, it's the best that ever happened to me. I have so much gratitude for it, but man, did it, when it happened, it was hard. It was terrible. But it ultimately put me on my true journey of self-healing and self-growth. And I'm very open about it. I do talk about it. I was living on antidepressants and Adderall, and I was not really practicing what I was preaching, to be honest. Okay. I was struggling with my sleep. I wasn't sleeping great. I was drinking wine at night, clenching, grinding, and I was struggling internally. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen the movie about, oh gosh, it's Legally Blonde or whatever. And she has this woman that she's trying to defend. And she's like, where were you? And she's like, I can't tell you. She's like, because if they find out, I was getting liposuction, right? And she owned a workout, business.
Right.
Because my people will think I'm a fake. And I really resonated with that. I was not living my truth. But what happened right before COVID was the first time at Breathe and Thrive in Florida. Me and Florida have a connection. It's like a part of me, I think, internally. And anyway, my mother had never seen me lecture. Right. It was literally the week or 2 weeks before the world shut down. Okay. So that was our last big collection before everything happened. Zoggy, the whole team's there. And I got up on stage. And it was the first time ever I presented on my own case. I showed my own airway, my own everything. And actually, I don't know if anyone knows Paula Fabio. I remember I put up my airway and she goes, well, that explains a lot. Thanks. And I remember at the end of that, everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's what we've been waiting for. It was this authentic thing. And then we shut down. So obviously it was all embarking and unraveling in a perfect time. And when this happened, that particular doctor opened me up to something that in Lafayette, Louisiana, of plant medicine. And I talk a lot about this. I'm very open about it. I had went at this time. I had felt called to maybe go drink ayahuasca in Costa Rica, and I had to come off all the meds. And I had a beautiful awakening. And it was a part of me really recognizing and healing. And I can sit and say to you guys today, since that day in 2022, I have never taken another pill. I don't take any antidepressants. I don't take Adderall. I haven't drank alcohol in 2 years and 1 month. Um, I I still have journeys to go, but I've physically changed. I've mentally healed. I've just truly evolved, and I really work. And I work with breathing and mindful meditation. And I really started to unravel my physical self, and ultimately has allowed me to embark and become what I think is the person that you're sitting in front of today, Neel, who I'm very grateful for you to say to me, might remind you of somebody like Jay Shetty, or somebody who communicates on a level and heals other and empowers people, because that is really what I know is my purpose. And I believe the gift of life for me and all of us, well, we all have the gift of life of breath, but the gift I was maybe given was, I don't think the mouth is, or a tongue tie or myofunctional therapy is the answer or the secret sauce. But I think the mouth is the secret door into the window of the body. And I think the things we can see in the mouth are just like so fabulous. And I feel so special that I can like kind of be the maybe the leader, or, I can take you on that tour of what I see. And now when I see somebody's mouth or tongue, I can really see their traumas. I can see where they're holding stuff. And ultimately, when I look at that fascia, I see golden light, and I see what it pulls, and I can see when people are struggling with that. And I don't mean to go too woo-woo on it, but I feel that I have cleansed and I'm working on myself so I can connect people, so I can allow myself to try to help navigate them, be their navigation or support, to maybe be part of unraveling or helping them become the leader they want or the person they want, whatever that may be. And maybe this myo breathing is part of it. And I had come across you, and I'm going to bring this and maybe then you can share. We just ran into, I had been kind of stalking you a little bit because I saw you had done Zoggy's breath work, his body work during the time he was getting his expansion, while he was doing his MARPE, and going through his physical transformation. And I heard him talking about you. And I knew that I was still really wound up in my head. And I knew I finally started to remove so much of the inflammation going on internally, but I was still really struggling with the inflammation in my head. And ultimately this year some of my teeth started fracturing because even though I was healing, I was still clenching and grinding so bad. And I was starting to now realize I needed to go on my own journey of like, do I need MARPE? Do I need all these things? And everybody kept saying, like, I felt that I needed my head. I needed to be adjusted. I needed to figure out if my bones were or if I was ready to start moving this, right? Could I start that? And it was the last minute thing that I got an opportunity to speak in San Francisco, where you were speaking as well, just this November. And you walked up and I was just like, Neel, I'm Melissa. Hi. I was like, I feel like we're very spiritually connected.
Yeah, totally.
So I don't know if you want to shed a little bit of that on that moment. And then the next thing was like 10 minutes later, I have you working on my head.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, whew, that was this was November, like you said, San Francisco, WDS, World Dentofacial Sleep Society Congress. I was there, um, and yeah, you kind of like tuned in to what I was doing with Sarush in terms of, architecting the alignment of his cranials, his facial bones, or just head to toe, and that's like a journey in and of itself to categorically go through the body and see what's going on. And so I feel like that window into like when you and I met, and how like right away there was resonance. I was like so happy that we just struck that conversation. You started telling me about, not only so like just like you did there, you were in Breathe and Thrive, you were telling your airway, and you were showing people like what you went through, and I think that's like a powerful way to um, to just show people you are so committed to self exploration, self healing. So it just comes through you with that. And so when you were talking about it, you were equally talking about, of course, you were there with like Maya Munchie, right? And then you were
Yeah.
there talking about the way that we have overlap with Dr. Zagi, and then but quickly you went into like what you were going through, what your yearning like is for even a fuller expression, not just of like your craniofacial structure, your airway, but you were just talking about like this convergence of like what you were trying to tackle in terms of getting yourself into a more vitalistic expression of life with your physical health as well. So yeah, I mean, it was like moments into talking, I'm like, we just gotta, let's check it out, let's see, because let's. And so, and I remember you sat in that chair looking out at the bay, and as I was working on things, we just were talking both about like what I was finding on you, but I think we were also just talking about how we both have this way of looking in, like you said, the mouth is a door through which you can see so much, and you see people's traumas and things. And I know you were like seeing in me as well, like, the body is a portal, and through that portal we can then come in contact if we use intent and presence and like just be connected to people. We can see what really potentially pulls at them from these deep layers of the soul or the consciousness or any of that. So, but yeah, look, I'll just say that it was really fun because I'm working on your cranial shifting things, just in that little brief, I don't even know how long it was. It might have been like 20 something minutes.
Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, this is cool because it was our way of just connecting and seeing what change we could elicit in the moment. But it was also the beginning to our true like connection
Yeah.
collaboration, which has led to even today and some other things that we have in the works. So that, yeah, looking at that time is like a nexus, epicenter of our meeting. It was so fun. So yeah, tell us more about that.
So I think that's really where, I'm at today. And a lot of people will ask, like, well, okay, well, this is amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. But like, what does that mean? Like, how does this look? And, I say that it doesn't really mean anything changed. For me, business wise, the clarity came into is that I really wanted to dive in and get really focused of these two different businesses that I have. Right. And so, I am the clinical director. So long and the short is on that, just to end there real quick. I went on this journey, and ultimately most people, that job no longer ended up being what was aligned. So, and all I want to say is that there's just a way you can look at every circumstance and situation. And this is actually, you and I had this Lafayette connection. You had said, you go, where do you live? And I said, Lafayette, Louisiana. And I'm going to speak really honest of that. I'm from New Jersey, outside of New York City. I'm actually from kind of rural part of New Jersey, but it's still 50 minutes from New York. So you still connect yourself to that, like,
Yeah.
tri-state. And I lived in Las Vegas and LA and like, Florida, like big areas. Like I'm not, I'm from a small town in New Jersey, but I could easily get to a very big city. So I had some things I needed to heal with living in Lafayette, Louisiana, right? Like was it my home? Was it where I was supposed to be? Because I came here for this one idea, and that's not what it was for, right? And I had to recognize, I could have looked at like I was lewd here under wrong preterm, all this stuff. I could have went negative really easily. And don't get me wrong, there was months I was. But ultimately what I was able to see was that I was brought here for a lot of other reasons. It's a really very, very it's a wonderful place to raise children. It's very easy to live here. It's cost friendly. And I had a really bad relationship with money, and I'm still working on it. I don't lie that, right? I think we all can relate to and can recognize in some ways of how we're raised about finances and money, greed. And I ultimately thought that if I made a lot of money, I'd fix everybody's problems. I'd fix my own, I fix everybody else's. And on many of these journeys, I have a grandfather that my grandfather was he like raised me. I love him dearly. And my grandfather came from pretty poverty type situation and worked his way up. And taught me, use pecking order and all kinds of things. And long and the short was like, my mother struggled, and I think he wore that a lot. And I think he thought if he could make $1 million or 2 million, whatever, right? And he could fix all of our problems. And I recognized that when he passed away, I put those beliefs in my backpack, if that makes sense. And then I proceeded now to decide that it was my job to make all this money and fix for generations and all this stuff. And I ultimately, that's not my baggage to carry, it's somebody else's. And I had to work through that. And I now recognize that I still do want that, but I chose that, right? Like now I say, I don't do it for my grandfather. I do it because I choose to, right? My own choice and right. So I bring that up because coming here was me recognizing that it doesn't have to be all about money, right? Like you can make money and you can grow. And I think it's important for me to bring up money today because that is one thing I talk a lot about in my leadership and development of teams. Money's not dirty. It's energy. Okay. It comes, it goes, it flows. It's okay. Money's not a bad word. And everybody, and it's a necessary, right? We need it to grow, to evolve. And some people at certain times will get more of that energy. And then you hope that they will dispense it and deliver it positively to who they need. And ultimately, I needed to recognize that. And I needed to learn that so I could create my own energy around it. And coming down here was the place I needed to be to do that. And ultimately watching that unravel, and a lot of teams and development, and even let's talk about one-on-one people. Oh, that's so expensive to take that course, or why do you do that? Well, it's not you're not paying, you're not paying just for this knowledge. It's about taking an opportunity and allowing yourself to, one, spend some time on you and be around a group of people that are elevating their thought process and bringing you up with them. And then hopefully you grate some gems in there that you take back to your journey that then you can elevate and grow. And this is the cycle, right? This is how you grow on it. And I recognize when you just talk about it and put it out there on the table and recognize it, all of a sudden it kind of goes away, right? Like all of a sudden now people, I can breathe a little bit, right? Like, let's get that out of the way because that doesn't need to be. And this has all been part of it. So I honestly had to like regrow the businesses when I got here, like after this particular circumstance. But, and I bring this up very lighthearted because I know in California, people are struggling very much, but in certain cultures, fire is a cleansing mechanism on some things. And I will say it felt like my whole world came burning, crashing down. And it was heartbreaking and devastating and mourning. And I had to like live through that and purge it and honor it and all that. But it did give me this opportunity to rebuild for me in this place of light and energy. And I send that love and prayer to everybody who's struggling, but I really honor that. And that's what I'm looking for is I want to help people rebuild. And a lot of times when people are coming into this airway space or they're trying to change their practice or they're bringing in a new service, a lot of times it is because maybe they're running from something or they're not happy with something. Like there could be something going on. And a lot of times what I recognize is when people add these services into their practice, all of a sudden the things that they weren't dealing with come rising up on the other side. So you kind of need to bring balance back out in that. So Inc., our consulting firm, really focuses on helping people evaluate practices and personal, whether you're a myofunctional therapist, you're a chiropractor, you're a dental office. Dental is probably my niche, but we work with all different types of companies. And I've been able to take on bigger companies the last couple of years. I was able to do a collaboration deal with Myo Munchie. I know you had Dr. Kevin Boyd on. Yes. God, such a fan. And him and I really connected as well because he's doing a lot of work with the building of chewing and mastification. Mm-hmm. And I realized why I love the munchie so much. You put a little munchie in a kid's mouth or an adult's mouth, it highlights their dysfunction. You can see it. And when I started showing that I was building programs and development around chewing, Dr. Kevin was all about it. And so I'm excited. Hopefully the three of us will be able to do some stuff with maybe Munchie team in the future, because that's a really great way to communicate with people because chewing is accepted worldwide and it's something everybody does naturally, but most people are doing it not great, insufficiently. And it's a really great opportunity to help communicate and educate and get more people involved by using chewing and mastification in that realm. So really exciting kind of opportunities there. So that's that one side. And then ultimately we have Faceology. Sarah Hornsby and I co-own the brand, and I'm the clinical director of that online. And we are one of the largest myofunctional therapy organizations. We support internationally and US. And I'm really proud of the work we do at Faceology. I have some amazing therapists. We are everyone, we do hire within through the Myo Mentor educational system. And I have really elevated, and we're doing therapy from a real place of really looking at the person. So I still do every single consult because I find that to be a really sacred space where I get to connect and find and connect with the people to try to recognize maybe what their bodies are needing. And I will say at Faceology, we are online. And if I really feel like you need in person, the beauty of being a faculty member on Faceology is I have this beautiful alumni of students all over the world. And if I feel like the person in front of me really needs one-on-one connection and they need to be meeting with someone because they're craving that, or their body needs it, and that's going to help them be able to get to where they need, we're the first ones to refer out to another MyoMentor grad or somebody in that space. So, but I do hope that consultation is something that people can really take. I try to be very thorough in it. I write out really nice detailed plans, and I really talk about unraveling their wire, right? Like unraveling
Yeah.
themselves and finding out. I know you like this concept. It's one of my, and I get it. I want to take full, this is Dr. Barry Rayfield. It's kind of comes out of the ALF concept of unraveling the bone and being softer, and how the ALF like whispers to the bone, where palate expanders are a lot more like yelling to the bone, and braces are like talking to the bone. And all of a sudden we're doing this paperclip kind of exercise, and light bulb moment. And I'm like, oh, this is everything, right? Like, how do you take something that's really wound up and slowly put light pressure and recognize how to then get it to lay flat and balanced? And when I'm meeting with somebody, I'm always looking at like, where are they the most raveled? Where are they the tightest? And where do they need light pressure? And where do they need to be seen? And is that awareness? Is it elevation? Is it balance? Is it posturing? Are their teeth and dentition creating such an obstacle that they're unable to even find their way to find any type of balance? Because every time they open their mouth, they're automatically thrown into more dysfunction. So I really spend time focusing on that. And I really do say that's because of my time in orthodontics that allowed me to see it. It's all engineering, it's all cause and effect. But learning how to go light pressure and slow, I think a lot of us in the world need to soften, right? Because we're all hard, we're all quick, we want it done yesterday, we want results, we want to see it. And I think that's why ALF has not gotten the mainstream attention, because it's slow and we're impatient, and everybody wants the palate expansion. Everybody wants to go quick. So I want to see those teeth move. And I was as guilty as that too, because you want to please your customers or the patient and make them see results. And I'm launching with I'm doing a Myo Ortho course for myofunctional therapists coming in February on the Myo Mentor platform, and I've been doing a lot of work preparing for it. And so I took a new ALF bending wire just because I wanted to get back in. I always liked bending wire, and it's perfect, right? All divine again, like all of a sudden, all these downloads, all this intuition. And I think I'm going to place it as one of my team building exercises, is this unbuilding wire and teaching you how to unspiral yourself. And that can be used in everything, don't you think?
Oh my gosh. You see me taking copious notes over here because I love what you're saying, and I'm also doing this so I can know which. Okay, so this is, I'll be real. I'm like, I got like 11 or 12 like areas that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to dive back in and get a clip of this to share it, because you're just saying so many things that resonate, on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level. And I mean, that is health, right? That's like, health isn't like just one thing or the other. It's like the convergence of all these things. And so, I mean, when you say, like Yeah, I love that picture of talking about unraveling, talking about bending the wire. The fact that you were just like, it makes me think of well, I'm just a big fan of Avatar, like the Earthbender, and
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
those kinds of concepts, because I think I see so many parallels with like life is not just one; it is many things. And when we're trying to unravel and untangle, like you said, it's like you're looking at this big picture of like, where is this coming from? So um, there's just so much to consider with that. And like when you look at someone and you can say, I love that you're saying light pressure. Just so many people, they don't, they just need the right um, vector, the right place, the right intention. They sometimes that takes care of what other people have tried to force. I see that so many times when people come in
Mm.
and they're just like, get in there on those pterygoids. They're like, that hurts so much, but I know you need to do it. And I'm like, no, I don't. I only did that
Mm.
to check the tension there. I'm only going to, talk about this for a moment to bring that analogy
No,
to
please.
life,
Yeah, yeah, no.
I'm like, oh, that is, yeah, those pterygoids are so rigid. And um, we don't need to dig into those. In fact, the fact that they are that rigid, by now I can feel, not just with my fingers, but with my inner world, I can see that tension doesn't start there. And of course, like we can look at the floor of the mouth. I mean, I talk a lot about the floor of the mouth
Yeah.
because of the protocol that I've developed. And I say it's the floor of the mouth that really creates the tension in the orofacial complex. But even that, somebody's like, yeah, is it because of my tongue tie? I'm like, yes and no. It's actually because of those mandibular tori. But the mandibular tori have adjacent fascial tension in that anterior digastric. But that's not why. Let's look below and I'll see the parathyroid glands often misaligned in those cases. So we'll release that. And then but I'll say, but what else? And then we'll look through the body and see it's the right kidney, it's the pelvic floor. But then, like one guy, I was in LA, Santa Barbara last week seeing patients. He came from LA to Santa Barbara to see me, and we had just done a 2-hour session. And I love to help people in person. I also do virtual work where I help guide people. But when I was working with him, he did this 2-hour session, and he came and at the end of the session, I'm like, we have one area that just won't shift, and it's your parietal temporal complex. And
Hmm.
he's like, I can feel it. And we shifted so much in that 2-hour session. So we did so much. So then he came back for a 3-hour session in Santa Barbara where we went deep. And when I got to that structure again, I said, it's not moving. And it's the floor of your mouth. But the floor of your mouth is not moving because of your right calcaneus, your right heel. But your right heel, it's not shifting right now. Why is it not? So I'm checking all these things work. And I'm like, that right calcaneus won't release. And I know if I forced it, it would go. But I know then it would not be good for him, not be good for his heel. And in fact, it would just misalign right over again, and he would keep needing it and needing it and needing it. So by now I can kind of like forecast and fast forward those moments to
Yeah.
rewind it back. And I can say, what's going on beneath the surface here? And so then I just listened and I heard, from that inner voice, I heard writing a book. And so I said, are you writing anything? And he said, yeah, I'm writing. And I said, yeah, tell me what you're writing.
Hmm.
And he said, I'm writing strategic leadership. I'm taking this course. And I'm like, so these are like course notes? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, okay, what about journaling? Are you doing that right now? And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. He's like, I'm not doing that now. Kind of like, wait a minute, I'm not doing that now. And I said, I know, yeah, okay. Let me just see. I went through the whole thing and I said, I think your body is telling me, I think you have a message in this concept that you're thinking about, and it needs to come out. So he told me later, yeah, he went to the beach right after, and he did this, voice and pouring out his voice to find out what he was thinking, and then he realized what he was thinking, and that was beautiful. So I love that, but in the moment though, his body heard, felt validated, his fascia on his foot melted, and his heel released like butter.
Mm.
So
So beautiful.
it wasn't like he needed to go to the beach session after. We could
Hmm.
say in the moment. Anyways, then we checked back up and the floor of his mouth was looser and his pterygoids were way looser. So by now I know, yeah, you can't just look where it is. You got to
Yeah,
look elsewhere. And if you feel
absolutely.
like, sometimes you're forcing things and like, I think this concept for you, I'm like, when we feel like we need to force things open or when we feel like we need to like really go at things. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we've done everything.
Yeah.
Now we need to dig into those deep myofascial strains and let's get this done. But some people are like, oh, right. I can't believe you just released the parathyroid or that, and that's what melted. And I'm like, that's what we need to do is find out where sometimes that light pressure is needed. Deep pressure will not solve. And, you can
Mhm.
force it and it actually might create more disarray. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there because I loved your concept and it really provoked within me to think, yeah, I think I love this image. I feel like it so reminds me of why Compromised to Alchemized had been such a clear message for me to say and speak about because you like bending the wire is so much like alchemy because it's not
Yeah.
about the force, it's about looking at like what all
It's
it
about the
takes.
nuance. Yeah, it's actually about a connection, right? Like how you bend your wrist and how you rotate and how you line things up and actually keeping things at certain angles. It's got a lot of nuance to it. So a lot of people, I think most orthodontists are engineers, right? Like they're very engineering mindset. That's kind of how they test. So cause and effect and all that stuff, but they're taught to move teeth, and no one moves teeth like orthodontists. I mean, that's what they do. And I don't ever mean to take away, and I always say this, like, I honor orthodontists. Like, I love them, they're my people, and nothing would make me more happy that every orthodontist at least recognizes and just says that this is a tool in their toolbox. I am not diminishing, and I want to say this just because if I get a chance and anyone shares this, I believe there is a time. I know people need expansion, like
Yeah.
orthodontic expansion, regular expansion. Sometimes you need to yell at that bone. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure always 100% what that means. And so I dive into a little bit more on this. And because, like, my son, he needed traditional upper and lower expansion, and now we'll move him into ALF.
Yeah.
I needed to make a big impact early on to catch it so I can move
Yeah.
that growth. So there's a time and place for everything. And one of the things I really want is, like, it doesn't, in whether it's therapy, it's leadership, one-on-one coaching, development, whatever I get the opportunity to do and bring, to the collective, it's always about now really just trying to take a moment and looking and recognizing what that person needs.
Yeah.
It's not, I almost want to say, like, from a myo standpoint, it's not being exercise centric, it's about being patient centric.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in everything. It's not just being teeth centric, it's being full body centric. And we all have this opportunity to do so much more and to communicate on a higher level. And it's really not a time to be pointing fingers at other people, or a time of saying, oh, that one does it wrong, or I have gratitude for everybody doing it the way they're doing it. And I recognize we need to have research and data. I get that, but the data does lie in the change of a person, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some people that are doing, like, if people are taking time and helping others and developing them, like, those are the people I want to be around. Like, those are the people I want to work with. I want to develop those people, and I want to connect with them, and I want to help them. And that's really ultimately what my goal is. And I'm going on this beautiful journey of really working harder to have meaningful, impactful conversations that I hope people can take something away with. And oh yeah, ultimately, if they want to work with me, that'd be great. I'd love that too, because I need that energy. I need that flow to keep growing. But at the same time, I want people to feel that way so then they can walk away and grow in their space and be great. Like, I have a dream that every little town in America will have a really airway centric go-to place, right? And the only way we're going to do that is by developing really strong chiropractors, body workers, dentists, ENTs, and creating communication and collective conversation. And I think what Dr. Zaghi and his team did, they set the tone for us. They really opened that door, and that's gratitude. And then we have so many other great educators coming out the door. I don't know if any of you guys know Dr. Maggie Graham and Liz Taylor, Untethered. There's some ladies who got to get on the podcast. I had an opportunity to spend time with them, and they're going to crush it. They're doing great things. Me and Dr. James Thomas, we're hoping in the future, JT and I will do some stuff together. The stuff I get to do with Sarah, I tell a lot of people this. Sarah Hornsby is not my business partner. She's my sister, right? Like, and a lot of in a lot of worlds, people would have thought Sarah and I were maybe set up to be rivals. You know what I mean? But we make a little joke. She's classy and I'm sassy, and
That's great.
we're a really good balance for each other. And we don't know, we sometimes will battle it out like sisters, but we have an undying love and truth for each other. And I have gratitude for how she has, a lot of people don't know, she's been a pioneer in laying out the way we educate online way before COVID or anything. And, she was a big part of Myo Masterminds. A lot of people don't realize that she was part of that initial group. I mean, I know Sonda's, the original, but her and Sarah and Sonda were a part of that. And then Sonda and I know they've taken it to another level at TBI now, which is absolutely fabulous. And, we're doing some really great things on the faculty over at Myo Mentor. We got Dave Hendrickson, if you don't know Dave, amazing myofunctional therapist up in Seattle. And him and I do a business and myo course for our team. And then me launching this new ortho myo course, which is really just teaching myofunctional therapists how to have better conversations around and about orthodontic appliances, and ultimately how to get more airway orthodontists and dentists to sit at a round table with you so you can collectively collaborate. And the way to do that is through education. So the more you know how to speak their language, I tell everyone, if you don't know how to count in Palmer, that's how orthodontists count in the Palmer system. So upper right quadrants, they count teeth differently than general. Well, it's going to be hard to have a conversation with someone if you don't even know their language. So that course, we're really diving in about teaching how to have those conversations. And then my big thing is that I'm launching my own podcast at the end of February, and I'm so excited about it. And it's called Melissa the Mouth, which is, I think, pretty fitting for me.
Love it. Yes.
And and then ultimately, you and I have some things that we're going to be working on this year, some collaboration stuff we've been talking about. And that's really my passion for 2025.
Well, it's a blazing passion, and look at all you do. It's like, it's so cool. It's so inspiring, and it's so, you could take just each one of these missions, these motives, and also like.
Can I actually stop you one sec? Right now on our recording time, it's 1:11.
I noticed that. I wrote it down. 1:11. She's launching her podcast. That's what I wrote down.
Want to say,
totally.
Just honor those. Those are my spiritual numbers. I love those numbers.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, I love that.
Yeah. They're my numbers. Yeah, I see them, and then they're my special stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted to just notice that, take a moment to honor it. So my apologies for cutting you off.
No. That's like there's numbers of perfection and numbers of awe. Like there's an awe that there's some meanings with that, and of course, like I love numbers, so I love that. Okay, so yeah, you'll see it later. Well, I don't know if you'll see it, but it says 1:11. She's launching her podcast, and so that's gonna be so cool to see that.
I'm excited. Yeah, I hope that people. And again, someone asked me, I said, everybody, a lot of us interview a lot of the same people, right? But I just hope that people might go, oh, I'm going to tune in with Melissa, because hopefully it will be a different conversation, right? It will just be a place of people being able to be vulnerable and authentic, and ultimately just allow them to communicate and rise up. And Dr. Neel, I have invited, I'd love you to be one of my first guests on the podcast, to extend and hopefully just keep us, shedding this out to people and just launching just great conversations and collective.
No, so good. In fact, I was on Brittany Murphy's podcast. I was number 99, and then Dave was 100, right? The one right after me. So it was funny how that looking at that. But I think, yeah, you're just like.
I'm putting out my 111th customer is going to be Joe Rogan.
Nice.
Or I'm going on Rogan. I'm putting it out there. No. Or maybe it's Jay Shetty. Maybe I should say it's Jay Shetty.
Yeah, we'll get a hold of Jay. I'll get a hold of Jay and talk about it. But so many things. I'm so excited. Yeah, and I'll just mention, most people, unless they get a quick, the pick we share, but most people will be seeing this and hearing this after you share with my bodywork training this weekend I'm doing, where you and Suraj Vatish and Dr. Eric from Galindo from Mexico, that you guys are streaming in. So some people will get this via the recording when they get that. Anyways, I'm just really thrilled that you're presenting, because I have a contingent of body workers and some myos and hygienists who are coming. in person, but then there's people who are attending via streaming, and that's tomorrow and Sunday. And I'm excited that you'll be just because I think I love the fact that when you speak, you tell a story, you tell about unraveling. But you come at this from so many different strengths and experiences that built into you these strengths, which I know is that's how you know how you can build in people like what
Mm,
they need in order to make them fortified, strong, as well vulnerable. Like you're vulnerable. You share with your heart, and that generosity is really beautiful because I think people know that, they feel that, they're like, they know when people are generous and give of themselves, they can feel safety, security, nervous system regulation. They can feel that. So, well, I know you've already done so much, and I'm excited to see all the things that you will do and the people that you will talk to, and we'll do more of this hopefully, and then I can't
yeah.
wait for our collaboration to grow and so much. So yeah, thanks so much for your generosity today and sharing all that you did. I know we're kind of coming to, I think, a good like fulmination of what we're talking about. And you gave so many, like, often somebody says at the end, like, do you have anything left to share? Is there one thing? I mean, you had
Mm,
so much to share. So I feel like don't put any pressure on yourself because people got so many golden gems that I
sense.
think they're going to be like, whoa, I just need to go walk away and do something with that. That
I
being
think,
said, I
yeah, I
want to
think
leave
I'd
you with
like
a
to
chance
leave.
to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to leave with one. Sorry. Yeah, I'd love to leave with one thing. And again, um, my mind went real quick because the doctor who else is joining us on Sunday, Doctor, who,
Eric Galindo?
yeah, I literally just had a patient in Mexico that I was like, I need a doctor from Mexico, and you said Mexico, and I'm like, thank you, universe.
Yeah.
I think that's almost exactly what it is. But so we need to connect on him.
Yeah.
Is he a pediatric? Is he a dentist in Mexico? Does
Oh,
he?
so he's actually he's a tongue tie focused, primitive reflex focused pediatrician, which is cool.
In Mexico? That's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
amazing. So we'll have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
share on that. I got to
Yeah.
get more on that. I think that what that just was right there, like ask, don't be afraid to ask. Like whoever, the universe put it out there. And I always encourage people, like a lot of times we do things, we always put ourselves second, our families, our children, and again, obviously that's, being parents and spouses and sisters and brothers and all that stuff. But I ask you to really think about, like, what have you done for your own self-growth? What have you done for you? And all my myofunctional therapists, I actually did this. I do like a little Instagram thing in the morning called Clarity Cafe. And I
Mm-hmm.
just started. And I asked today, the myofunctional therapist will be like, "Oh, I'm going to take another myo course," and I'm always
Right.
like, "Okay, yeah, I don't mean that. That's great, but I mean
Yeah.
like truly something so that you can grow as a human, as
Yeah.
a to get to know yourself on a deeper level. We spend so much time getting to know others and loving and everyone, but spending that time to like really know yourself and investing in that self growth journey. And I really encourage you to ask yourself that question. When is the last time you've truly invested in you and done something just for you to grow and get to know yourself a little bit better so that you can show up a little bit on another, vibing at another higher? There's a thing we do in our household. We ask each other how we're vibing
Yeah.
because the way we vibrate is really high. Zig Ziglar comes out of this a lot, right? Like it's all about vibration, how high you're vibing. That's how you connect, right? The higher your the more enlightened you are. It's just because you're vibing higher. So I ask you, how are you vibing? And right now I'm vibing out about a 9, even though I'm feeling 9.5, feeling really good. And ultimately, if you're not there, I used to, I was at days at 4s and 6s. What do you need to fill your cup, to build yourself so that you can start raising your vibration? Because that ultimately is going to make you better at whatever you do. I don't care what you do. So yeah, that's my ultimate thing, is like, check in with yourself, keep your vibration high, and constantly raise it to the ceiling.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you. That's so powerful. And I know people have how to find you in the show notes and all of that, but I know that, if you want to just give people a quick,
Yep.
how can they reach out? How can they contact you?
Well, so you can absolutely head over to the website. It's a little bit under construction right now, but you can work with me at melissamugno.com. But Melissa the Mouth on Instagram is where we're doing we're really starting to build it. We're in a rebranding right now. So things are all over, but you can definitely find me there. But if you want to just email me directly, melissa@melissamugno.com is where you can reach out to me. And I'd love to get a chance to chat with you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, this is so good. So we'll be
Thank you for this opportunity. It really, it felt so natural, and it was just it's just a fun conversation. So I really appreciate the opportunity to allow me to share and just be authentic. So thank you for
and
holding space.
my privilege. Absolutely. You are so welcome. Welcome anytime. I can't wait to see what comes of this. I know you're going to set a lot of wonderful sparks. I know those are things that people need. We need energy. We sometimes need those around us who have a lot to give us that spark to go and do a lot. So you've given me that today, Melissa. So I'm excited. And all right, well, yeah, everybody stay tuned. You'll be seeing so much more. The Compromise to Alchemize podcast we're going to have Melissa back, and yeah, please just go ahead and go over to her page and check it out, and then look for her podcast when it comes out, and also subscribe to mine. And the more comments and the more reviews we get, the more we'll be able to reach more people. So yeah, beautiful day. Everybody have a phenomenal day and flourish and be nourished. And yeah, we'll be excited. So in these conversations, we do deep dives, and resources are aplenty. So please tune in and enjoy. And I'm so excited to have you along for the journey.